All right, what's up, New York? How's it going? I'm Ross Facatoro, bringing you guys the 68th episode of the Apples to Apples podcast. And the collapse of the New York Mets is complete. A season that started, not even just started, 2 months into the season. 45-24, I think the record was. I don't remember the exact numbers. 20 games over. Best team in the league, best pitching stats, pitching staff, statistically until that point in the season. A lineup that, Soto hadn't really gotten going yet, but when Dora had like 3 walk-offs, he was doing his thing. Pete looked 10 times better than he was at any point last year. You kind of don't remember how shit he was because of the homer, but he got going. Here we are in late September, and game 162 that wound up being the Mets controlling their own destiny with the Reds losing a game 162 of their own, which at the time was if the Reds won, they were in no matter what the Mets did, but the Reds couldn't even win their own win and you're in game, which led to the fact that all the Mets needed to do was beat the lowly Miami Marlins. And not only could they not beat them, they got shut out. 5 hits, no runs from the top payroll in baseball at the hands of the bottom payroll in baseball. And the Reds being like somewhere in that 20 to 25 range reap the benefits of it. They got the champagne showers. They got the March to October showers or shirts. And the Mets are left fucking clueless. And the funniest thing in all of this is that this, like, there is a debate to be had that this is even the worst season in the team's history. Like, you think this is the, now it probably is. Like, if we're talking about it having a debate, it probably is either way. But you have 07 and 08 giving it a run for its money. And it depends on the age of the fan you ask what they think is worse of the three, the 2 or the 3. I mean, the fact that this isn't like the outlying worst one ever says all you need to know about this franchise. And it's remarkable, talking about how history repeats itself, right? 07, 08, 2025, one thing all 3 have in common is that the final 3 games of the season were against the Miami Marlins. The first game being a loss, the second game being a blowout win, and the third and final game of all 3 seasons being a loss that prevented them from playing postseason baseball. And I think so here's the thing. You'll have people who won't chalk this up to be a collapse because they're just going to say that this is who this team was. And there's some truth to that. But I think it's a little bit of both. You can't say, and this is coming from somebody, I know I don't do these every day. I should. I really should. This is almost like the wake-up call. If I were to do an episode of this, talking Mets every day, I was down on this team. I wouldn't say June 13th right away because it's bad. That was, by the way, the Tampa game, the Pride Night game. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but the Pride Night game. That was what wound up being like the pinpoint of when everything went south. But at the same time, that one loss, they were still, 18 games over 500? The best pitching staff in the league that, even though the names weren't jumping off the page, everybody, at least me, and I just told you, I'm the furthest thing from a positive fan, but at least me personally, I was going around saying, I'm going to give David Stearns, the pitching guru that he is, the benefit of the doubt that he could bring in me, you, and everybody else listening, watching this, scoop somebody off the streets. And if he has faith in them as a pitcher, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Because no way in hell did I think Luis Severino would have the season he had. No way in hell did I think Sean Manaea would have the season he had. And I was somewhat happy about the Manaea signing. I didn't like the Severino signing at all. And they were both terrific. I didn't see who else. Quintana. I mean, Quintana had already been here. I mean, what he did with Daniel Nunez, kind of coming out of nowhere. Senga was already here. But I feel like Severino and Manaea are the big two examples. And I was saying, the fact that we saw what those two turned into, I'm going to give this guy the benefit of the doubt whether he deserves it or not until I see otherwise. Boy, oh boy, could this year not have been more of said otherwise. Where Severino's off the team, and rightfully so, people talking about bring back Severino. Look at the season he had in Oakland or Sacramento. He would have been the same. He would have been the same shit. We bring back Sean Manaea, which I was happy about. I said he felt like the de facto ace pretty much, which is remarkable that they wound up going as far as they did without a bona fide ace. But it felt like Sean Manaea was the ace. So I said, you got to bring him back. He misses the first, 4 months with the bones in his elbow or some shit. Which, by the way, he's been hurt his whole career, which is nothing new. Even Severino, too, is another thing. It wasn't so much that he was hurt, though. He was just shit this season. And both of which were shit on their way out of San Francisco and New York. But Manaea misses the first 3 or 4 months or so. We're waiting. Apparently, when we first heard about it, it was only supposed to be like no later than a month. We saw him for the first time in July, I think it was. That Kansas City series, I think was when his first start back. Or right around there. And he never got going. He was a complete shell of himself. And to that point, like everybody, here's what I say is different about Sevy, Manaea, and then Quintana. Quintana's different than me because Quintana was sitting there until fucking March. The opening day damn well pretty much started, and Jose Quintana, who in October, which said, we just brought up, it's, you got to the NLCS without pretty much going off de facto aces and, having to rely on the bullpen pretty much in terms of the pitching staff. But Quintana but as great as Manaea was in the regular season, you kind of saw the fatigue coming to him towards the end of the regular season. And when you see Quintana in October, was pretty much your go-to pitcher. And he's sitting there with the season like right around the horizon, right around the corner, and you pretty much traded him in a sign-and trade for Frankie Montas. With David Stearns' old team that is now currently the 1 seed without him in the front office. And people talking about, well, that's the team he built. Guess what? He's now built 2 teams, one of which has the highest payroll in the league, is a fucking embarrassment that we're going to get into, piece by piece. And the other team, guess what? It's a bunch of no-names. That's what the Milwaukee Brewers are. To the average fan, pretty much. It's Yelich, it's Churio. You haven't heard, the average fan hasn't heard of half of the... the average fan hasn't heard of half of the fucking people in Milwaukee. You go around asking people what they think of Isaac Collins and Caleb Durbin. Who else? Contreras, I put there with Yelich and them. But I don't even think he traded for Contreras. But Quintana was sitting there until March. And when you're talking about whether or not you're talking about, performance or injuries, there was a point in time, even when they were winning, that all you needed was just another arm, just for the sake of having somebody to fill out a roster spot. So much so that we're talking about this highest payroll in baseball, and every game, every time we see a new pitcher for the first time, we got to see that stat flashed up on a graphic talking about how they broke the record for most pitchers used in a regular season. It was like 47. 47 different fucking pitchers were used in one season. Broke a record held by the Marlins last year that whooped your ass and are the reason you're not going to be playing in this October. The highest payroll in baseball by a country mile. It's not a couple cents. A country mile. Top payroll in baseball. And you don't have a pitcher worth a damn to show for it. Who is it? Diaz, who's technically not on the roster right now? And he doesn't even feel like a closer because speaking of records, yesterday, Edwin Diaz broke a record. It was the first time in his career that he pitched the most amount of innings than any other pitcher in a game at the same time as him. In the same, like if you look at a box score, for the first time ever, Edwin Diaz had the most amount of innings pitched out of every pitcher in the same game. Your $20 million closer is going to opt out of his contract. It's the fact that it's not even a fucking guarantee that he's coming back when it should be. And he's the only pitcher on the team worth it. And we're going to say, like, Brooks Raley, he's good. Is he – what's even the fucking number? Let me pull up the number, the payroll number. Let's see here. Mets payroll, 2025, clocked out. I'm going to pull up Spot Track. Shout out Spot Track. They got like all the contracts, everything. The 2025 Mets payroll was $342,377,486. It says they're second here. So I'm not sure. Maybe the Dodgers are higher. Yeah, maybe the Dodgers, because they paid Sasaki and everything. Maybe the Dodgers are higher. Case in point, I don't care if they're fucking 5th. 10th. Top 10. And you're trotting out that fucking pitching staff? And the worst part is this anomaly of a GM you bring in. He was a Met fan growing up. What else? See what he did in Milwaukee? You see what he did in Milwaukee with that payroll. You could only imagine what he's going to do with this one. He looks even more fucking lost. And we kind of saw a glimpse of it this year. We'll get into it in a second. The thing with Milwaukee is it was all homegrown talent. And they all panned out. Corbin Burns, Hader, Devin Williams, Woodruff, I'm pretty sure. And this fucking guy comes in here, grabs himself a card at Goodwill, and just starts sliding everything off the shelves. That's so-called deep pockets. It doesn't matter how fucking deep they are if you're not going to reach into them. Everything's a project. The projects worked last year. It was a magic carpet ride. Everything that could go right did go right from June on. And it feels like June is the consensus. 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row. Because what was it? June 14th was the Grimace first pitch. So a legitimate 365-day rotation around the sun just completely summarized the highs and lows of Met baseball. And one of the big talking points out of this year specifically were the Pink Pony Club, whatever the fuck they were calling them. I call them the Pink Phony Club. That's a whole other thing. We talk about the Pride Night, the Pink Pony Club, the 5-borough race. It's Cirque du Soleil, bro. And you know what? I may sound like an old man yelling at a cloud. Guess what? I'm not the only one. And all this shit's fine when you're winning. When you lose, the second you start losing, we don't want to hear shit about it. We don't want to hear about the giraffe losing the races and shit. It's a fucking circus. They care about everything but winning. Players, management. Now let's get into this Pink Pony Club of Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong. Nolan McLean, you would think he's the greatest sig since sliced bread. He was great. I guarantee you if we saw him in postseason baseball, the second shoe would drop and he would fall right in line with everybody else. And you call me crazy. You say, where do you get that? theory from, right? How can you fucking explain a collapse like this? Like, there's just shit with this organization is unexplainable. It's just always that second shoe dropping. I'm sure there were people that saw Sean Manaea having the season that he did. I'm not sure there were many. You know, when we heard about Francisco Alvarez coming up, you thought he was the next fucking Buster Posey. And he's swinging at pitches 20 feet out of the zone. He's so worried about framing. He can't even catch the fucking ball. As a catcher, Ronnie Mauricio had every tool in the world to be a stud. He's fast, switch hitter. He could field. He had the hardest hit ball by a Met in like 2 years. Until I think Pete did it last night, with that fucking bases loaded fly out. Here's an unexplainable one for me. Tell me how Mark Vientos is the record holder for most RBIs in a single postseason, and there were times this season where he was getting fucking DH'd by Jared Young. Or Jared Young was DHing over him. Explain that one to me. Like, there's shit you just can't explain. And I guarantee you that Nolan McLean would have been one of those. Sooner than later. I guarantee you it'll probably happen first thing next season. And there's people talking about he's fucking Nolan Ryan. And people saying like, well, statistically it's true. His first 3 starts were better than like Paul Skeens. You're going to try to fucking tell me he's Paul Skeens? He was good. He wasn't the greatest thing since sliced bread. But it's almost like, and look, he's the least of their problems because he was good. That's what I'll say. He's not this generational ace now. It would be great if he is, but I don't expect it to happen. And on that same note, so now you got the other two, Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong. These 3 were borderline unhittable in the minors. Tong, I feel like, is 2 years early? That's how good he was. And I think he's like 2 years 2 years early of his ETA. So then when they come up to the majors, Jonah Tong can't even get past the first fucking inning. And Brandon Sproat's a mixed bag. I feel like Tong was universally looked at as a question mark, as like you don't know what you're going to get out of him. I couldn't believe the amount of people that were basically crowning Brandon Sproat an MLB pitcher already. Let me pull up his stat line, or like his starts. Because Tong, there were moments, and the whole thing with Tong is he threw his fastball way too much. Like if you look at, as somebody posted his Savant, and like the first 29 of the first 30 pitches he threw in a game were all fastballs, and he was getting shelled. I think that was against the Reds too. So Tong finished the season with a 7.71 ERA. That's mostly because of the Texas start, although he was shit against the Cubs too. But the other 3 starts weren't even that bad. San Diego start, he was great. 5 innings, 8 Ks. You look at Sproat, guy's got a 5 ERA. And his last 2 starts, he went 4 and 4 2/3, gave up 4 runs in both, and in his last one against the Marlins, struck out 2. So when I see people saying, oh, he's fine, he's the least of their issues, yeah, you're right. But we wouldn't have been clamoring for this guy for months on months on months, asking what dirt he had on David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza to not get him called up for him to be fine. If he was just fine, we wouldn't have gave a shit if he was up or not. And like it or not, this clearly isn't their fault. This is the boy genius David Stearns, the pitching guru. Like it or not, the second they get called up, they're expected to be major contributors to this dog shit pitching staff, and they weren't. McLean was. They weren't. McLean wasn't even the top prospect of the 3. Definitely not ahead of Tong, and I think Sproat was more highly acclaimed too. And there's the whole thing with McLean, like, to retain his rookie status for next year so they don't have to worry about, like, some fucking contractual shit down the road, which, by the way, if only we had an owner that wasn't struggling financially, we wouldn't have to worry about this shit. Wink, wink. And it's just stupid shit. It's thinking, 2 steps ahead. Your season's in turmoil. Your season was at one point in time 20 games over 500. You were pretty much a write-in to be at the time a fucking division winner. Worst case scenario, a wild card. And you got packed up by the Miami fucking Marlins. And what wound up being a win, and you're in game, you got 5 hit, you got shut out. We start off with the pitching. It's not even like it's the pitching's fault. And there's the whole thing about how Mendoza handled it, basically being like a fucking, like, I don't even know. A pitcher being in every inning, like it was like the fucking disintegration of the franchise, and they were like trying to showcase it. It felt like the fucking John Cena farewell tour, trying to like show off every pitcher we had throughout the years. To the fact that Diaz was the only one that wound up pitching multiple innings. And it wasn't even that wasn't even the fucking reason they lost. Soto with the double play. Pete, unlucky or not, the hard hit fly out. Stupid shit. I got to go through the top. Man, you could probably do a top 20 list, but I don't know if I want to put myself through that. At least the top 10 of the worst losses that contributed to this, because for everybody that said, oh, it's just 1 or 162, they'll be fine. At the time, guess what? That's subjective. It is game one. It's only one game out of 162 games. You know what I mean? It's a marathon, not a sprint. And you could probably play this game with the Reds, with Detroit and Cleveland in the AL, whoever the fuck. You play this game with everybody. I don't know if you could play it to the extent as the Mets, though. Getting one hit by Cleveland. Kicking the ball over the infield against Miami. That week against Seattle and Atlanta, where I think they lost 5 of 6. I think that Pete broke the homer record, broke Darryl Strawberry's home run record. And that one game against Atlanta was the only game they won for like a week. And they even almost fucking blew that one, which was a 5-1 game. Kind of like Tampa, the San Diego game. That's another one. There were multiple examples, specifically 5-1 leads. Maybe that's the number of the season. They'd have a 5-1 lead. They'd have a productive inning in the first half, and then whether they be home or on the road, the second somebody took the mound, it was Blackburn against Tampa, it was Frankie Montas against the Padres. They fucking shit all over themselves, and the lead evaporated right away. Right away. They were the epitome of let's analyze how much fucking effort and cojones we got to give. Let's look at who we're playing. Because here's a little known fact. What wound up being the final 4 series of the season that they won, the last 4 series they won of this season were the Cubs, the Padres, the Tigers, and the Phillies. And the Mariners a little before that. They beat the Braves too. But so 5 of the last 6 series they won were against playoff teams. The Phillies, who are the 2 seed in the NL, Mariners are the 2 seed in the AL. The reason they're not going to be in October baseball as well, the Padres and Cubs were playing each other. And the reason they're not going to be in October right with those teams is because they could have fucking beat the Marlins and the Nationals. It's just the epitome of playing down to your competition. Right? You'll always have the history of this season. I'm sure it won't take long before it's broken again. But one of the, multiple records you broke this year was that series in Pittsburgh is the worst 3-game series you've ever fucking played in the history of this team. And there's a hell of a lot of series to forget in the history of this franchise. Would they get outscored like 30-4? They weren't even fucking competitive. The Savannah Bananas could have put on more of a fight against the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's a shame. It's a disgrace, really. It's like, you know, I almost feel like I don't even know how to word this. They, you can't even call them a bad team. They're 83 and 79. It's just they were a stupid team. And stupid teams lose in stupid ways. Bad teams just lose. The Rockies are a bad team. The Nationals are a bad team. The Pirates, unless they're playing the Mets, they're a bad team. White Sox, bad team. Sacramento's a bad team. The Mets aren't at the bottom of the standings with them. The Mets are just a stupid fucking team. They're a situationally horrific team. They're a lazy fucking team. They're a team that if you're not playing a team that you got to get your shit together and you said, all right, we're going to have to take it up a notch if we got to beat this team. They kick their feet up and they don't give two fucks if they win the game or not. And at the end of the day, like I was just saying, the old it's only one of 162 continues to rack up and rack up and rack up. And before you know it, you got a fucking treasure chest of games that you could have, should have, would have won. If you gave a damn, and you clearly didn't. And that's why they're fucking packing their bags. I saw that. I'll make like a clip and put it on Instagram. I saw this graphic. It was Lindor and a bunch of fucking score bugs of games that they either had the lead in late or a significant leads at any point, and they wound up losing every single fucking one of those games. I brought before the Gavin Williams game, the Milwaukee game, or it was the Cleveland game where they held up Taylor at third. And then the next night they sent Marte, and both fucking times they lost. They wound up losing the Cleveland game, and the Milwaukee game wound up being the final out of that game. Atlanta, the fucking I brought up with Alvarez before, the wild pitch, and then Ozuna with the bases clearing double. Stupid shit. You sweep Philly at home. The whole thing with Alec Boehm and the psychedelic microphones. You tried making that like a grimace of this season, like a voodoo doll. Laughing at Philly, and then guess what? You take all three against Philly at City, and then you lose all four down at Citizens Bank Park. So any fucking mojo or progression you got us at a sweeping, the Philadelphia Phillies got fucking wiped off the table. And now everybody that laughs at Philly fans and does like the ha 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 because of beating them in last year's playoffs, I guarantee you that they'll get the last laugh and they'll get a ring out of this season. If you go back to 2015, we beat the Chicago Cubs to get to the World Series. The Chicago Cubs was the team we had to get past in that NLCS to win the NL pennant. Keep in mind, this is in the midst of the whole GOAT curse, the curse of the Billy Goat and all that. That wound up being the final year of that curse of the Billy Goat, because when we got the one-up ha-ha off the Cubs in 2015, a little less than a year later, they got their last laugh, winning the whole damn thing. I guarantee you, I would put the mortgage on the fact that laughing at Boehm with the psychedelic microphones, laughing at the Phillies last year for beating them in the NLDS and not getting a ring off the mojo of that series, guarantee you, Philly gets a ring out of this year and they get the last laugh. Because why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Anything that feels too fucking, I don't want to say evil, but like evil towards Met fans. You know what I mean? Just like the nightmare that never ends, the fever dream. And shit like this, it builds up. It's not always an immediate like fucking kick to the nuts. Some of it takes time. I brought up the Cubs when I brought up, with the Yankee fans, a little brother, big brother. Guess what? As magical as a season as we had last year, somehow the Yankees won up the stair. And now this year, the thing with Soto, that we're the big brother now. And they're, albeit a wild card team, we'll get into it. They're going to play more October baseball than Juan Soto is. They're going to play more October baseball than Clay Holmes will. Mark Vientos, we thought we had something there, and he's a fucking pinch hitter. It's stupid shit. It's stupid shit. If you thought that this situation with the who control their own destiny and the Reds needing to just win more games than the Mets, while they were playing the top seed in the league and we were playing the lowest payroll in the league, If you didn't think that going into yesterday, the Reds wouldn't do their part and neither would the Mets, which would, the way things boiled down, the Reds would get in via neither team doing their part. If you didn't have it drawn up like that, this is your first rodeo as a Met fan. And this is coming from it. I'm 18. I can't imagine some of the shit these 40 and 50 and 60-year-old fans have seen. How many punches they've taken. How many kicks to the balls from this organization that doesn't give a flying fuck. I'm so sick of hearing how much Cohen gives a damn when he turns Citi Field into the fucking into a jamboree, whatever the fuck that kid's place is called. With the fucking giraffe didn't win a race all year. Guess what? The giraffe and the Mets have something in common. Neither one of them are going to see fucking October baseball. The Queens crew going to keep dancing on their own. It's just fucking stupid, intangible shit. I guarantee you, if Steve Cohen's last day started with a W and ended in Pond, we would talk about him so much more. He would not be exempt of all this fucking blame. He wouldn't be. If this had the Wilpon name attached to it, they would get grilled so much more. But it's Stearns, it's Mendoza, and it is. But Cohen's name never gets mentioned for a reason. Why is that? Why is that? Because yesterday also marked, a special era in Mets baseball. Yesterday was the official end of the 5-year World Series win-now window. And the way it ends is with 2 postseason appearances and 2 postseason series victories. No World Series, but that's a given, And the only 2 series they won were both last year. It really should be 0 because, let's be real, they got outplayed by Milwaukee. If it wasn't for that fucking last hurrah off the bat of Pete in the 9th, they lose that series, and then there's not even a Philly series to be had. They got their teeth kicked in by the Padres in 2022, and the other 3 years, they don't even fucking make it. I dare you to say if Fred and Jeff Wilpon had their name written on that fucking 5-year stretch, that you wouldn't be grilling them either, the way you're not grilling Steve Cohen right now. I dare you to say that to me and Met fans' faces with a straight face, and you would and it's somewhat true. Cohen is just being fucking exempt of blame, and I don't know why. Because he's rich. Guess what? Fred and Jeff Wilpon were rich. I know they had the hit with the Madoff thing. They weren't on the streets with a fucking empty McDonald's cup after that. They were still owners of a professional baseball team. They were just cheap. And at what point, yeah, statistically, they got the second highest payroll, top payroll, whatever. I don't know why the Dodgers are first. I think the whole thing with the deferred money with Ohtani, Yamamoto, and them, I guess there's like an intangible there, but they're 1A, 1B each and every year. Tell me what money you've spent besides Lindor the month you took over the team, Soto this past winter, which, by the way, you weren't even the front runner for Soto until 2 hours before the deal happened? Right, we were hearing about he was on a one-way plane to Boston, to Toronto, to the Bronx. We never heard Queens. Never heard Queens. Never heard about Queens. Until someone had to light a spark under his ass and say, get your shit together. This is a generational name on the table. Give him every fucking penny he wants. And you almost lost out on him. Now, that's revisionist history. You wind up getting him. But besides those 2, and the fossils of Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, who with Verlander, the only reason he came in was to replace Jacob deGrom, who got a ring that same season. And 3 years later has been the better pitcher. Oh, but we didn't want to pay him. He's only a Met legend too. We didn't want to pay him. We want to pay Justin Verlander, who didn't finish the season with the Mets, by the way. Neither did Max Scherzer, who also got a ring with Jacob deGrom that later that same season as well. But besides that, who have you spent money on? Starling Marte? Mark Canha, while you let Kyle Schwarber go to the fucking Phillies for about, $10 million more? Oh, but I forgot, you're struggling financially. Who else? The pitching staff, we didn't want Garrett Crochet. And look, I know the Red Sox gave up an arm and a leg, but you look at our farm system, who the fuck is, worth a damn at all? You look back in hindsight, you're telling me if you gave up Alvarez, Vientos, and Mauricio, you'd be fucking shedding tears? They can't fucking develop anything. They couldn't develop Ken Griffey Jr. So I don't give a fuck who they give up in the farm system. If it's this farm system to die for, how could we not have enough to give up compared to Boston? They gave up Kyle Teal and Mydroth and all that. Go that extra mile. That's what winning teams do. Because guess what? Garrett Crochet is going to start a wild card game tomorrow night. Who else? All this money you're spending on Sean Manaea and Severino, Chris Bassett, Kodai Senga, who was supposed to be a 3 at the time, established himself as an ace, and was probably the biggest fucking problem out of anybody on the payroll this year. Like, legitimately, if you had to pinpoint one player to put blame on this year, to me, it's Kodai Senga. You had big shoes to fill, fair or not. You became the ace of this team. Either you or Sean Manaea, but you'd been here longer. You got the fucking ghost fork plastered all over the stadium. Everybody's buying into this bit with you, and you couldn't fucking locate the strike zone if it was the size of the field. Everybody's onto your ghost pitch. It's not special anymore. You can't even strike people out in fucking Syracuse. Who else has he paid? Quintana? Clay Holmes? Griffin Canning? Who has he paid? It's like that when Brody Van Wagenen had that tweet. Right? Merry Christmas, Met fans. And it was a picture of Dellin Betances, Rick Porcello, Jake Marisnik, and Michael Wacha. Tell me how that's any different than Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, Griffin Canning, and Harrison Bader. Who, by the way, Bader's batting like fucking 400 for Philly when they traded for him while we had Cedric the Entertainer and Tyrone Taylor. But tell me how that's different. James McCann over JT Realmuto, who also went to a division rival and has been in the postseason every single year, and that's going to be no different this season while he's sitting on his ass on a bye. And Kyle Schwarber's got 50 homers while Mark Canna's out of the fucking league. Like, I want to know how this guy, he spends money on 3 people, spends out of his ass on 3 people, which, by the way, this is a good problem to have, which, by the way, Juan Soto automatically becomes one of the worst contracts in the league, and Lindor's been probably one of the worst contracts in the league for the past 5 years. And I'm not saying I'd rather not have Lindor than have him, especially off the postseason he had last year. I'd say he pretty much bought himself benefit of the doubt for the next 5-10 years, as long as he's here, off that postseason alone. But the prior 3 years to that, and so far this year, he has not lived up to $31 million. And Juan Soto could fucking bat 40. He could hit for 40-40 every single year. And he's not going to be worth $51 million either. But you know what? He's spending the fucking money that he was promised to spend when he came here. The whole thing with Carlos Correa. That was a shit show. It's been a complete revolving door of bullshit since he got here. And because his last name starts with a C instead of a W, it doesn't get talked about. And a 5-year win now period that I know he's trying to walk back. Guess what? We have receipts, Steve. You're fucking silent when the team's on a decline, and when they win 2 games, you're talking about Fab Four and Super Pen and the Pink Pony Club and how the fans are awfully silent when the team's, performing. And you got to see the tweet. I'll pull it up. I'll read it word for word we see this morning. Oh, give me 1 second. He probably, if he remembered his fucking Twitter password. Here we go. 11:53 this morning. Mets fans everywhere, I owe you an apology. You did your part by showing up and supporting the team. We didn't do our part. We will do a postmortem and figure out the obvious and less obvious reasons why the team didn't perform up to your and my expectations. We are all feeling raw emotions today. I know how much time and effort you have put into this team. The result was unacceptable. Your emotions tell me how much you care and continue to motivate the organization to do better. Thank you to the best fans in sports. By the way, apparently we weren't the best fans in sports this time last year when you were talking a lot of shit about how we didn't show up to the ballpark. Fast forward this year, we showed up so much, you're plastering the fucking number on your big ass LED TV. And that's a whole lot of talk for somebody who better do shit in this offseason. People coming and going. Chavez, I swear to God, if he's here, that's another one. The whole thing about this season was it was never just one thing. It's an easy fix if it's just that the team can't hit or the team can't pitch, but they do other shit right. Basic fucking fundamentals. That's a pretty tricky thing to come back from if you're behind that 8 ball that you can't fucking catch the ball and throw it. But it was always something different along these multiple losing streaks. And when it wasn't the hitting, that was the problem. Eric Chavez would go to his Instagram account and he would put up stories about people are quiet now and shit, kind of what Cohen was doing. I have never seen a more reactionary team, top to bottom. People online, people within the organization, on the roster, so reactionary. You trade for a reliever, we're at the damn, and Helsley and Rogers, and they're dog shit the second they come here. And I can't even put that on Stearns because they were having good seasons, which is almost makes me more concerned that everybody, the second they throw on a Met jersey, they turn into a complete shell of themselves. We saw it with Darren Ruff and Vogelback a couple years ago. We saw with Helsley, Rogers, Soto, Mullins this year. They went 0 for 4. But all 4 of them, even Mullins he wasn't having his best season, but he was having it. He wasn't batting 1 for 30 every 30 at-bats. Helsley was closing games and had a solid amount of saves. He was fucking unusable here. And they called it a super pen. It wound up being the Clark Kent bullpen. The Fab Four. My God, all the money you're spending on those four. You had the Fab Four. I mean, my God, all the money you're spending on those 4. I would hope they all performed. Everything has to have a fucking nickname. What's the nickname for this season as a whole? Frank the Tank brought it up, which, by the way, everybody was grilling Frank, talking about how, he's always negative. So, he called it. Well, he can't call it because he's always negative. He was spot on all year. And he summed it up perfectly. This almost rivals my Angelo. He said, with Gary Cohen last year, you had from 0-5 to OMG. This year, you had from OMG to what the fuck. Because that's all you could say about this season. What the fuck happened? That's it. Top payroll in the league. You're using 47 different pitchers. You're 0-68, 0-69, whatever the hell it wound up being. In games where you're down in the 8th inning, you lost every single game that you trailed in the 8th inning of. That is, that did never even occur to me being a potential stat. The Rockies won more games like that. And the whole thing about comeback kids last year, the fact that the way you could compare this season to the last 4 years of Rangers hockey, both the 2 years under Gallant and Laviolette, it's almost uncanny. The first year with Gallant, the first year with Laviolette, the whole comeback kid mantra, defied expectations both times with Gallant. It was the first season they made the playoffs with the whole rebuild culture with Hedel and Kako, which were all gone now. Lafreniere's still here. Well, Laviolette, they were expected to be a playoff team. They weren't expected to win the fucking President's Trophy. And with Mendoza, I mean, my God, the first 2 months of the year were dog shit. That's how, soon the team he was taking over was expected to be nothing. And he wound up, delivering the magic carpet ride for ages. And then the year 2 for all 3 of them, Gallant didn't survive his. Laviolette didn't survive his. From the sound of it, Mendoza will survive his, but he probably had the most embarrassing of the 3. Gallant makes the playoffs, but gets his fucking teeth kicked in by Jersey. Considering the deadline they had with Kane and Tarasenko and the expectations around there, the fact that they didn't host a playoff series in the first place, went up 2-0 in the matter that they did, and still fucking didn't get past the first round. To the Devils, no less, which made it worse. Laviolette doesn't even make the fucking playoffs, and neither does Mendoza. And at least in Laviolette's case, they were just flat out bad the whole season. They were just shit. And maybe besides the first month. But they didn't collapse in fucking January. This was just a full-on collapse. Something happened June 13th. Wink, wink. Something happened. And it all went south from there. And it's incredible. I guarantee you what I brought up before about the Final Four series they won, Final Four and 5 of 6, all being playoff teams. I guarantee you I would not have written them off just right off the bat against the Dodgers. Because that's what this team did. They couldn't beat the shit teams. They played to the level of their competition. I guarantee, I'm not saying they would have beat the Dodgers, but guess what? Since they've done this expanded playoff series, playoff format, the 6th seed in the NL has been in the NLCS every single time. The Mets last year, D-backs 2 years ago, Phillies 3 years ago. I don't think you could have automatically written this team off. That's what makes it all the more fucking, frustrating that we'll never know. We will never know. Because you couldn't score against the Miami fucking Marlins. It just makes your blood boil, dude. Makes your blood boil. And Stearns had the press conference today. Maybe I'll post a clip of that. That's all there is to it, man. They're an embarrassment. Yankees I got it on the scroll. Yankees will start up their wild card round tomorrow night against Boston. 3 games set. All 3 games will be in the Bronx. The other series is in the AL. Tigers, who had their collapse of their own, taking on the Guardians. And then on the NL side of things, it's the Dodgers against the Reds in LA and the Padres against the Cubs in Chicago. That's what it boils down to, man. I want to do a separate episode. I'll cover the Yankee series probably a little bit more. Maybe I'll do like a predictions type thing. But this is all about the collapse, man, because this exceeded levels of just negativity. I'm a negative fan. Frank's a negative fan. Joe and Clark, the majority of the fan base that gets shit for it. And I don't even think we could have drawn up something like this. I really don't think. I definitely couldn't. I don't think Frank could. I mean, Frank will talk about they'll go like 3 and 159. I mean, I don't think that's possible, but I didn't think this 2025 Mets season could be possible either, so I wouldn't hold it past him. Maybe I would hold it past him, though, because I think, there's the element of the tease. I feel like I would rather have a season go 3 and 159 than relive this season. I really would. I'm not even just saying it. I really would, because guess what? You don't make the postseason either way, and you're not fucking tricked and fooled, and there's no reason to watch bullshit every night. There's no reason to. I'd rather. You're telling me the Pirates had a better season? Or the Pirates had a more nightmarish season? Really? The Rockies had an awful season. It almost got to a point where they were so bad that they could enjoy the little things about the games. They had more comeback wins. They had more walk-off wins, I think. Why? Because the Mets won 40 more games? They're going to play the same amount of postseason baseball, so who gives a shit? I would have rather been the Rockies. That's what we're down to. Top payroll in the league. Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor both have 30-30 seasons, and I'd rather fucking be the Colorado Rockies. Thanks, Steve Cohen. Thank you, David Stearns. Thank you, Carlos Mendoza. And thank you to every fucking person on the 40-man roster, whether you hit for 40-40, whether you had a fucking 10 ERA. Worst comes to worst, when you were supposed to deliver, you were the furthest thing from it. You look like the fucking Savannah Bananas out there kicking the ball around, bouncing off people, throwing the ball to the outfield. Juan Soto couldn't fucking field a beach ball. Mark Vientos couldn't field the fucking wrecking ball. And the Cincinnati Reds, which, by the way, this isn't even Cope. Their roster's kind of dog shit on paper. And I know paper doesn't matter because the Brewers' roster's kind of shit on paper. Detroit's roster on paper is really shit. But it's not like you got beat out by the Braves. The Braves would probably suck more because it's the Braves in division. They've had your number forever, but they're a better team than the fucking Cincinnati Reds, who's got what? Ellie De La Cruz and Hunter Green. Who the fuck? Matt McClain, Spencer Steer. These are the people that are fucking beating out your roster. Brian Hayes, who couldn't get off the Pirates fast enough. Miguel Andujar, who was fucking exiled out of this city, being one of, the Yankees got their own problems developing players. Fucking run out of this town, and that's their big deadline. It's bullshit, man. That's what it is. That's what reality is, though. So I'm going to do a playoff prediction, all that in a separate episode because I've gone way too long with this one. And the Mets deserve their own episode. They do. I'll put out a post like top 10 worst losses of the season. And that's how it's going to be. And by the way, if you look at the scroll, if you're going to any of these postseason games, there's a concert coming up that you want to go to. Hit up SeatGeek. Use my code Apples to Apples for 20% off your first purchase. That's what it is. Too bad you can't go to Citi Field this October because it's a Spear Halloween now. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. I will see you on the next episode of the Apples to Apples podcast. See you guys.